Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from a Frontier. Thank you for stopping by. I'm looking forward tremendously to hosting January Makamba over the weekend at Mindspeak in Dar es Salaam. If you're interested to know what it is, I did a small YouTube compilation. That link is on Rich Wrap-Ups. And then I was going through January Makamba's website, and he asks, "Who am I?" which is a question I suppose many of us ask at various times in our life. I'll tell you a little bit about him. In 1983, my parents decided that I should move back to the village, this time without my brother, to live with my grandmother. This village is actually in Lesotho in Tanzania. And for about 40 years, we've had a fellow work for us called Juma Hamed, and he comes from there, and he's described it to me, and it sounded like the Alps. And I told January this. Life in the village happened at my grandma's place. She used to have a little village pub selling local brew. Lubisi it's called. At 6 p.m. me in an open shop. Most customers were men. In the village people knew each other, and many customers will drink on credit. My grandma, who died this March, was tough as steel. She would handle drunken men who are aggressive with command and authority, and cow them into leaving the pub or paying up their debts. I would watch in amazement as they collected the money or she measured portions to customers. Village pub conversation meandered from gossiping to politics to the latest developments in the village to the retailing of the good old days. In 1985, he moved back to live with his parents in Lesotho. He was in America. Listen to this. But America was a great place. For summers, I took on all jobs one can imagine. I delivered pizza, magazines. I worked in nursing homes, caring for the elderly. I worked with people with mental disability. I worked as a security guard. Then, and this is a book I haven't read, Father Rene McGraw, who got me to get Emmanuel Levinas' Totality and Infinity Essays on Exteriority. I'm going to find that. And since then, I've become a better person, I believe. He was at the Carter Center, worked for the president in Tanzania at State House, and he's now vying for the presidency, and he's 41 years old, and I met him for the first time when I did that trailer with him. And he's so courteous. This is the habit of people from Tanzania, and in my experience from Lesotho as well. And he describes how his grandmother was very big on etiquette. Macro thoughts. You know, I wrote this, there will be blood in the water. There is a small window if we want to be sharks last year. And look at what's happening now. And let me jump to my home thoughts. The little one got into bed at about 4 in the morning. And maybe, I'm 49 turning 50, and she's 8, and she gives me so much happiness. And I was so glad, because I get up around that time, when I get up every hour practically, and put her fingers in mine, and I marveled at how this tiny little thing, who was born in the Catherine Baby Hospital in Mombasa on the sea, had grown so tall. And I thought of Aisha now going to university and Layla in only 12 months. Aisha and Layla are what's called Irish twins, which means they are less than a year apart. It's so quick. That's what I wish I'd realized all those years ago, that you have one life and it's so fleeting. In fact, these are actually my sorts of markets, and I'm not sleeping much, pacing my veranda, looking up at the stars occasionally when I can look away from the mobile phone, because the tape is telling such an extraordinary story. Last night I was thinking about how I had to spend a small fortune to put up a tower to get a radio internet connection 10 years ago. And today I have a Jaguar in my phone, and I'm in Africa. And I was a little slow getting onto things this last year, I must admit, because I write a lot. You got family, you don't want to start betting the bank on everything. And because of that, but suddenly Stanley Druckenmiller kicked in, and it was as if, I got taken over by a third party. And that's where I am, staying up all night, keeping an eye on things, and boy, got to keep an eye on it. And it goes back to the point that I said, although we had a big short covering rally in the euro today, it printed below 105 first thing in the morning as I was sitting here. It then rallied to 106.50, and now it's at 105.86. It's going to parity and below. I go back to Druckenmiller, who said, as a macro investor, my job for 30 years was to anticipate changes in the economic trends that were not expected by others and therefore not yet reflected in securities prices. And he could be describing how I am. And therefore, when you see such a big move, you have to jump on it. And then the market will come and find you, as it did this morning in the early hours. Soros had taught me that when you have tremendous conviction on a trade, you have to go for the jugular. It takes courage to be a pig. As far as Soros is concerned, when you're right on something, you can't own enough. And several people, actually, when I've told them to do the euro-dollar trade quite a long time ago, a few people said to me, well, we can do it ourselves. And I wanted to say, you know what? I've lived and breathed this. I've stayed awake to watch what's happened. And you think you can copy that. And sometimes I get a toothache because something's going to happen. It's just incredible, actually. But these are the markets I like, big macro moves, and one has to get on them. I said to Nishit, someone often says, why don't we do this ourselves? And Nishit said to me, they simply do not know what they're talking about. I'm more Sun Tzu these days. That kind of comment would have upset me many years ago. And the point is, everything has to align. You have to be right, you have to be quick, and you have to know what you're doing. And I like to think I do. And just before I left this morning, I hugged Hannah tight. I opened her doors because she has a veranda. And I looked up at the stars, and she said, what are you doing? I said, I'm looking up at the stars and thanking God and your grandmother. Her grandmother was my mother, and she used to point at a star and tell me, one day I'll be gone and I'll be that star. And your grandmother for my Hannah. I've been promising to take her snorkeling with whale sharks. Between February and April is when you can do that in Diani Beach and enjoy incredible whale shark safaris, and I still haven't done that. There's so many things. I meet people who've been here for about a year. They've done everything. And on that point, I'll put up a photograph of Hannah learning to windsurf on Diani Beach 437 days ago. And the water was so still it looked like glass. I like this photograph from Buzz, landscape on 500 PX Golden Sunset, San Francisco. Political reflections, let me start with this from Asia Times, but the bloody joke is on all of us. Gaddafi knew what he was talking about. Right from the get-go, he accused the so-called Libyan rebels of being influenced by Al-Qaeda ideology and bin Laden's school of thought, and lashings of cash and guns and arms from all sorts, from NATO to Qatar. And I wrote about this, my Gaddafi's, that piece I wrote in 2011, Gaddafi's body in a freezer, what's the message? I was talking about the raw feed of the capture and the death of Gaddafi and his son Mu'tasim. The bodies were lying bloodied and half naked. It's quite brutal, isn't it? A filthy mattress and a meat locker in Misrata. And I said, I was left thinking, what's this dead Gaddafi business really all about? And it's one powerful message. I went back to Marshall McLuhan's prediction in the Gutenberg Galaxy. This new electronic interdependence recreates the world, and the image of a global village has come to pass. The image of a bloodied Gaddafi, then of a dead Gaddafi in a meat locker, have flashed around the world via the mobile, YouTube and Twitter. Who's in charge of the messaging, I asked. Through the fog of real-time and raw footage, I note a very powerful message. The essence of that message being, don't FUCK with us, because you will end up dead on a trophy souvenir in a fridge. And it wasn't much more than that, was it? Because the aftermath has been so awful. I'll put up a photograph of a young Muammar Gaddafi that 824 Media have previously tweeted. And I'll put up that photograph that I like of a crowd celebrating in Benghazi. A few dozen demonstrators fled following the sound of gunfire around midnight, with some screaming. They hit a cop, according to a Reuters photographer at the scene. Casey Nolan tweeted this picture, several police departments here, word on scene, 2 officers possibly shot, 1 taken to hospital. Currency markets, well, it's been dramatic. The euro touched a level with the 104 handle, then rallied like anything all the way up to 106.50 and is now at 105.92. Dollar index, I'm not sure, but when I walked in this morning, 99.92, it's surely come off. Japanese yen, 121.20. Swissy, 101.18. Aussie, 0.7606. The pound, 149.62. That's bounced overnight. India rupee, 62.675. South Korean won, 11.2805. Rial, 313.08. Egyptian pound, 762.37. And the South African rand, 12.2732. Dollar index, I'll put up a 3-month chart. I remain very bullish. This is a head fake that we're in right now in the short term. I think the Fed is just one headline economic print away from raising interest rates, and I think, this issue about the strong dollar is really not a factor. The US, of all the global economies, is the most insular in many respects. Euro dollar, well, look at this chart. I'll put up a 3-month chart. Got below 105, went up to 106.50, and we're now just below 106. Let's see how things pan out. German yields are negative all the way out to September 2022, by the way. I still think we're going to parity, and I think we're going to 0.93. Commodity markets, gold, well, that was another one that went all over the place. Traded as low, below 11.50, then up to about 11.64. Last trading 11.59.17. Let's see if that can hold. I don't think it can. Brent and NYMEX crude oil, I'm very bearish again, as you know. Coming to sub-Saharan Africa, Lesotho. This is obviously the country near South Africa. Africa Confidential says, so uncertain is the atmosphere that South African police are still protecting the parliament building and Thabane's person. Put up a photograph that All Africa tweeted, Lesotho reopens parliament after poll. Apparently it's being protected right now by the South African Defence Force. The world currently faces a massive deficit of infrastructure investment, especially in the emerging economies of Africa, Latin America, and large parts of Asia. This is Claude Dauphin. Major international companies may increasingly place themselves at the center of the solution. I think that's right. Africa faces the biggest dearth of serviceable infrastructure, the report shows. Not only must the continent invest in new projects, but it also needs to repair very poor ports, power grids, and railways. The African Development Bank estimates the region must invest about $90 billion a year over a decade, equivalent to 15% of GDP in infrastructure. Zimbabwean riot police clashed outside parliament with protesters demanding the release of a human rights activist who was abducted Monday in Harare. Police fired tear gas on Wednesday. US Embassy in Harare expressed grave concern about Zamara's reported abduction in a statement Wednesday. Zim Media Review tweeted police retreating after being confronted by a group of protesters in Harare this afternoon. To his family in Africa, he was l'ultime espoir, the last hope. Tijan Tiam, it's safe to say, didn't disappoint, and I'm very proud because I worked at Credit Suisse many years ago, but they've chosen to appoint him. South African all share up 4.4% year to date, but it's corrected 1,593 points off an all-time high reached 6th March. South African rand has been under tremendous pressure. Last trading, it traded as low as 12.3425. My target was 12. We've hit my target, therefore I'm on the sideline. I'll put up a 6-month chart of it. Egyptian EGX30 is up 7.32% year to date. Nigerian all share down 10.68% year to date. Turned lower yesterday after rallying 13.666% since the 13th of February through yesterday. Morocco confirms in the clearest and strongest terms that there has never been a phone conversation between King Mohammed VI and the president of this country. A statement from the Moroccan Foreign Ministry said. Morocco cited the hostile, recurrent and unfriendly positions of the Nigerian government with regard to the Moroccan Sahara issue and the sacred Arab Muslim causes as a reason for declining Jonathan's call. Wow. Ghana Stock Exchange is down 3.63% year to date. Rwanda, Uganda and Kenya officials to raise railway project funds in Beijing. The three regional countries behind the Northern Corridor Integration Projects Initiative have written to China seeking an appointment for a joint visit aimed at mobilizing funds for the construction of the proposed standard gauge railway. Technical estimates put the total budget required for the project from Mombasa to Kigali at $14 billion. They've agreed to source that collectively. On that note, let me put up a photograph of the railway crossing of the old Lunatic Express railway at Manyani Gate, which is right near Savo. And I'll put up another photograph of the Mombasa-Nairobi railway taken just outside the entrance to Savo East. Banks seek to raise $10 million via share sale in war-torn Somalia. International Bank of Somalia, one of only a handful of commercial banks operating in the war-torn country, wants to raise $10 million in a public share offering that would be the first of its kind since civil war broke out in 1991. Somalia is open for business, Hassan told Reuters on the sidelines of a Somali investment forum in the Kenyan capital, Nairobi. People who go now will be the beneficiaries in the long term. Actually, Mogadishu real estate has been the best performing real estate anywhere, obviously off a bombed out low base, but still. Zambia's kwacha fell close to 2%, to its weakest level ever against a firmer dollar. On Wednesday, the dollar was very, very strong. Little bit of profit taking on that move, and when you've had such a dramatic, dynamic move, profit taking moves are pretty big. It's scary. Zambia to triple petrol supply to ease shortage in capital. Zambia plans to triple petrol supply to 900,000 litres a day using imported stocks in its storage depots after panic buying by motorists led to shortages in the capital, the energy minister said on Wednesday. Coming to Kenya, Diamond Trust Bank, whose CEO is Nasim Devji, who is a very true friend of my mother's actually, reports full year profit after tax was up 9.132%. Interesting results. Total assets up 27.03% to 211.539 billion. Profit before tax up 17.843%, but it got diluted because they issued extra shares last year under rights issues. So profit after tax up 9.132%. Full year earnings up, EPS up 4.53%. You can see the dilution there. Full year dividend up 14.285%. But they only pay they're paying about 12.5% of their EPS out as dividend, obviously conserving cash. It's well managed, has a regional footprint, and the EPS was suppressed because of the rights issue last year. Flametree Group has acquired food brands. That announcement is on Rich Wrap-Ups. I put up a photograph of Bob, man of the moment, because Safaricom closed at a record high for this. Same record high, did it in February, it's done it again, but it's obviously going to push on. Yesterday I tweeted my euro shilling price target is 85.56. That's something to think about. I think the dollar is king, and that the Teflon shilling here is outperforming every single one of its African peers. Nairobi All Share up 6.03% year to date. NSE 20 up 4.9% year to date. I said to Duncan a couple of days back, it's a classic bull market pattern where corrections are shallow. We've been in a correction mode. We still are in the NSE 20. Just to agricultural stocks, Kakuzi was high-tech 4.38%. Williamson up 3.649%. But bear in mind, tea prices up 30% since December, off a 6-year low though. Safaricom Kenya Commercial Bank announced that it will now be possible to get a loan of up to $1 million bob. Safaricom rallied 0.63% to close at a record high of 1585, girding its loins for an imminent push through 16. KCB rallied 1.72% on that news. Buyers outpaced sellers by a factor of 2 to 1 at the close, signalling, and I haven't checked today, that it should be going higher as well. Mumia Sugar, which ramped 14.814% higher over the preceding two sessions, gave back 11.29% yesterday and looks as if it's giving back some more today. People don't want to participate in the rights issue, apparently. Once again, thank you for stopping by.